It's Saturday, and it's midnight. Turn the lights off, grab a flashlight, check the locks, and get ready to spend the witching hour with Greg after dark.
Welcome everybody to Greg After Dark. The episode today comes from a listener suggestion from Sherry in Clarkston, Michigan, because this one kind of hit home for her. And thank you very much, Sherry, for writing in, because I love this story. If you have a story to share, a little haunted experience of your own, you can write in at fiendandgreg@fiendandgreg.com and visit the Greg After Dark page at www.fiendandgreg.com. Settle in, pull the blankets up just a little higher, and get ready for a visit to Eloise Asylum. In Wayne County, Michigan, the map remembers everything. It remembers the dairy farm, the bakery, the fire station, the post office, a sprawling, self-contained universe of 76 buildings spread across 900 acres. A place where over 10,000 souls lived, worked, suffered, and died. They called it a city within a city. They called it Eloise. But today, the city is gone. The brick shells have been hollowed out, torn down, or repurposed, yet if you walk the grounds after midnight, past the perimeter where the grass grows too tall and the shadows stretch too long, you're not alone. The ledgers hold the names, but the grounds hold the memories, and some memories refuse to stay buried. Welcome back to Greg After Dark. Tonight we walk the sterile, haunted corridors of Eloise Asylum. Fact, legends, and the things that still answer when you call out in the dark. Grab your headphones. Let's step inside. To understand the hauntings at Eloise, we have to strip away the ghost stories and look at the raw, agonizing blueprint of its history. It didn't start as a glamorous asylum. In 1839, the Wayne County Board of Supervisors needed a place to put the destitute, the orphaned, the elderly, and the mentally ill who had nowhere else to go. It began humbly as the Wayne County Poorhouse. But as Michigan industrialized, as population swelled, and as the Great Depression hit with the force of a tidal wave, the facility ballooned into a monstrous behemoth. By the 1930s, Eloise was a massive complex, featuring a massive general hospital, a tuberculosis sanatorium, and a psychiatric division housing thousands of patients. Let's talk about the medical reality of the era. Eloise wasn't inherently built as a house of horrors. Indeed, it was hailed at times for progressive treatments and early diagnostic x-rays and occupational music therapy. It was a product ahead of its time. When you pack thousands of psychiatric patients into facilities struggling with severe underfunding and chronic overcrowding, humanity tends to slip through the cracks. Medical journals and historical records from the mid-20th century document the widespread use of aggressive psychiatric therapies, insulin coma therapy, electroconvulsive therapy without modern muscle relaxants, ice water immersion baths, and in severe cases, prefrontal lobotomies. For thousands of people who passed through those doors, Eloise was the last stop on Earth. And when they died, whether from illness, age, or the toll of the institution itself, many didn't go home to family plots. They went to the asylum's own cemetery, a somber stretch of land nearby. They were buried in rows, identified not by names carved into proud headstones, but by small, numbered concrete markers. Over the years, many of those markers sank, weathered away, or were lost to development. A potter's field of anonymous numbers. And when you leave behind thousands of people whose identities were reduced to a ledger entry, you create a vacuum. And nature and the paranormal abhors a vacuum.
You said whores.
Shut up. This is Greg After Dark. Jeez. A potter's field, also known as a common grave or a pauper's grave, is a public burial place designated for the interment of unknown bodies, unclaimed individuals, or people who couldn't afford the cost of a private funeral. And the location of that cemetery was brought to light very recently. While local historians and genealogists always knew a Pottersfield cemetery existed based on historical archives, the actual physical site had become entirely lost to time, swallowed up by tall grass, brush, and overgrowth. So picture this. You're standing in a desolate, windswept field south of the sprawling, decaying ruins of the old Eloise complex. To anyone passing by, it looks like nothing more than an empty, forgotten patch of Michigan wilderness, choked by high weeds, aggressive brush, and thickets. Nature has done its absolute best to erase it, swallowing the ground whole. When local resident John Bernies pushed his way into that overgrown expanse, he wasn't greeted by grand marble angels, ornate headstones, or wrought iron gates. There was nothing standing to signal the dead. Instead, as he walked across the uneven turf, the real horror was right beneath his boots. Hidden entirely beneath heavy overgrowth and decades of encroaching soil were thousands of small weathered concrete blocks, roughly the size of a standard brick, sinking deeper into the earth like teeth slipping back into a skull. There were no names carved into these blocks, no epitaphs about being a loving father, a cherished mother, or a beloved child, just cold, brutal anonymity stamped into the concrete. A stark, lonely serial number for every soul the asylum left behind. Row after row of these numbered markers lay completely abandoned to the elements, swallowed by tall grass, hidden away as if the institution and the world was trying to sweep over 7,000 human beings entirely out of memory. It wasn't just a lost graveyard, it was a mass erasure. A place where society stripped away your name in life and took away even your marker in death, leaving them to rot anonymously in the dark undergrowth until someone finally decided to look down. And that man who looked down, as I mentioned before, was a Westland resident named John Bernies. The site was effectively rediscovered and brought into the public eye around late 2015. Having grown up near the complex, Bernies had always heard the stories about the cemetery, so motivated by local lore, he decided to walk out into the abandoned fields to look for it. And he found it, which led to the widespread media coverage and subsequent efforts by volunteers to document, clear, and honor the thousands of patients buried there. That cemetery is located on the southern portion of the historic 902-acre complex grounds, and it sits on a plot of land near Henry Ruff Road, situated south of Michigan Avenue in what was formerly Nankin Township. That Potter's Field was used roughly from 1910 to 1948 for all of the unclaimed patients of the psychiatric, the general hospital, and infirmary divisions, all framed and surrounded by a perimeter of pine trees.
If you're loving all things creepy and mysterious, join us every Saturday at midnight for Greg After Dark, wherever you get your podcasts. Let's get back to the chills. Here's Greg.
Inevitably, a place of such immense suffering births urban legends. Some are exaggerated by teenage ghost hunters. Others are whispered by former staff and local historians who swear by what they've seen. So let's look at the mythology of Eloise Asylum. For decades, rumors circulated about the tunnel system. Beneath the massive complex, a network of concrete utility tunnels stretched for miles, allowing staff to move patients, laundry, and supplies, all protected from brutal Michigan winters. In the lore of modern ghost hunting, these tunnels became legendary. Urban explorers whispered of locked rooms where restraints still hung from the walls, of medical equipment left abandoned in the dark, and of oppressive presences that seemed to block your path, daring you to go further. Then there are the specific entities reported by investigators. There's the legend of the nurse, a stern, white-capped figure seen peering from upper floor windows of buildings that have been sealed for years. Witnesses describe her uniform as belonging to the 1940s or 50s. She doesn't speak. She simply watches with a look of exhausted disapproval before vanishing the moment someone tries to approach or photograph her. And then there are the sounds. Countless paranormal investigators who have toured the remaining structures report catching electronic voice phenomena, or EVP. Clear, disembodied whispers captured on digital recorders. Whispers that ask, "Are you here for me?" Or, "Let me out." Are these stories just the byproduct of our cultural fascination with abandoned asylums, or are they picking up a genuine residual imprint left behind by decades of trauma? To find out, we have to look past the internet lore and listen to the people who have actually stood in the dark at Eloise. Various investigators, researchers, and media crews have explored and documented the Eloise grounds, focusing on its history and reported paranormal activity. Programs and documentaries such as Secrets of the Asylum and Expedition X have investigated the decaying structures and reported hauntings on the property. Teams like Detroit Paranormal Expeditions have conducted investigations on site, utilizing equipment like infrared cameras to document potential anomalies. Individual investigators such as psychic mediums and local researchers have also examined the grounds, documenting encounters with full-body shadow figures and other unexplained phenomena. Here's a brief Greg After Dark reenactment of some of the things that can be found lurking the abandoned hallways.
You think you're prepared for it because you've seen the pictures online, but you aren't. The scale of it is what gets you first. Even with half the buildings torn down over the decades, the air feels heavy. It's like walking through water. We were set up in what used to be part of the administration and patient ward building on the second floor. It was about 2 a.m. Total silence outside, except for the wind hitting the broken window frames. We had a static camera pointed down a long, narrow hallway, and two of us were sitting in a side room with audio gear. Suddenly, our motion-activated trigger ball went off down the hall. We looked at the monitor. Nothing was there. No drafts, no mice, nothing. My colleague whispered, "Did you hear that?" It wasn't a voice. It was the sound of heavy leather shoes walking with a distinct, uneven limp on the concrete floor. Clack, drag, moving right toward our room. We froze. I've investigated haunted houses for 12 years, but this felt different. It felt heavy, ancient, and deeply sad. The footsteps stopped right outside our open doorway. The temperature in the room dropped instantly. Our K2 meters spiked. And then, clear as day, right next to my ear, I heard a man's voice exhale a long, shuddering breath, like he'd been holding it for 50 years. I turned around with my flashlight. Absolutely nothing there. But the smell, God, the smell of carbolic soap, old wool, and damp earth hit us so hard my colleague actually gagged. We packed our gear and got out of there before we hit 3 a.m.
Stories and findings like this aren't isolated. Security guards patrolling the ground over the years have reported seeing shadows detach themselves from the walls, lights turning on in rooms with no electricity, and the chilling sensation of being watched from pitch black windows. Think about what Eloise actually was. It wasn't just a hospital. It was a sprawling industrial-scale factory of human misery. A self-contained city where you could live, work, lose your mind, and if you didn't have a family with the money or the mercy to claim you, you could die and be completely erased. If you're ever just south of Michigan Avenue, you can look behind a jagged perimeter of dark pines and you can find the Potter's Field. Thousands of people dropped into the earth. It's the ultimate quiet, a graveyard built entirely on the concept of forced amnesia. But the energy didn't stay quiet. If the cemetery is where they put the bodies to forget them, the massive brick buildings just a mile away are where the anger went. You have to wonder, when a place spends decades stripping away your dignity, your name, and your identity, what happens to all that raw, unfiltered trauma when the doors finally lock? It bleeds into the walls. That's why the paranormal investigators don't report sad, wandering spirits looking for a hug out in the hallways. They don't find gentle ghosts. Inside the K Beard building, especially up on that notorious 5th floor, the activity is aggressive. It's hostile. We're talking about the owner's daughter getting her hair violently yanked in an empty corridor. Women reporting invisible hands choking their necks. Shadowy masses tracked by canine units only for the dogs to refuse to go any further. A dark, unnatural entity seen crawling across the ceiling like an insect. You see the connection, right? Out in the pine trees, you have thousands of nameless souls left to rot in absolute silence, stripped of everything. But a mile up the road, the walls remember the cruelty. The cemetery is the anchor of the tragedy, and the asylum, well, that's where the storm finally breaks loose. If you look at the cold, hard facts, it's a monument to a medical era that struggled to care for its most vulnerable citizens. A massive institution built on good intentions that often drowned in the reality of overcrowding, budgetary failure, and experimental medicine. Thousands of people lived and died there, their names consigned to fading paper ledgers and anonymous concrete blocks in a forgotten field. And if you listen to the legends, the eyewitnesses, and the tape recorders rolling in the dark, Eloise, it's a place that refuses to let the world forget it existed. The buildings may crumble, the bulldozers may claim more of the property year by year, but the echoes remain, trapped in the brick and mortar, waiting for someone to walk down the hall and ask who they were. Thank you for listening to this episode of Greg After Dark. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who loves a good ghost story grounded in real history. And don't forget to write in at feedandgreg@feedandgreg.com or visit www.feedandgreg.com and click on Greg After Dark. And we'll be back next Saturday at midnight on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, keep the porch light on. The night is long and you never know what's walking past your window.
Thank you for joining us After Dark. We'll be back every Saturday at midnight to ruin your sleep schedule all over again.